tonight, so I'm gonna talk about how to successfully work with a freelance designer, and I'm gonna do it in English. Real quick, who are you? So I'm a co-founder of Pelo Studio. We're a design studio made from like 3 friends and designers from the same school. We got our experiences in last year. Since last year, we've been working with startups such as like these guys, like solving UX, UI, product issues, and stuff like that. And so for a year now, we've been like contractors, so outsiders. We're not part of a team, etc., etc. And we're just coming and change your baby product, like crashing down all the features you spend months and weeks and nights building. So it's not an easy job. And often it's like, okay, we dream about something, like, okay, let's build this. And we end up after issues, we end up with this, which is not like what we want for our baby product. Even for us as a designer, we like building great product that people used to love and stuff like that. It's mostly because like, from the two sides, so startup and clients, startups and freelancers, we have like, kind of like different expectation on the project. So for startups, when they come to freelancers or an agency like us, they're like, okay, let's build everything like we have a tight budget, stuff like that. But we need you like to come and give us like insight on the UX and really think through every features. We also need it for yesterday because we need to speak to VCs and the product's like a mess right now, so like do it quick. And obviously when it comes to deliver everything, our design, our mockups and everything, it needs to be perfect for a front-end guy. Okay, but on our side, we're like, okay, but what is the scope of the project? Because right now we're like, you're trying to brief us to build the next Facebook. It's like tons of features. Where are you going? What's your vision, your direction of the product? Okay, and how we make sure that when we give you like our mockup, so we make sure that the front end will be like really fine and how we imagine it. So then we're like kind of like stuck in a situation where we actually need to change the process to work with a freelancer and a client. So tonight we're gonna like give you the 5 tips to successfully work with a freelance designer, and you'll see the 4 is amazing. Okay, first tip. So ask like for a progressive contract. Let's not try to like come with an idea of like, okay, I want to do that for every single feature I imagine for like a really cheap budget, and ask for the freelancer to give you an honest estimate about that. So basically that's how it looks like for a freelancer when you get that request. It's like, I mean, like so many things to do. I can't even imagine the product in my head, how I can like give you a budget for that. So I'm like, okay, what we try to do with Pelo Studio is like, okay, like what are your specific needs right now? Like try to think a small scope. Just like, okay, let's work with a little bit part of your product, work together, like flesh out the process between us, move faster, and once we've done that, we can iterate and like move to the next project. So basically what we do is like, okay, we're imagining like a global estimate was like, okay, it could cost like, I don't know, 3K or something like that. But the idea is like, maybe we can start designing your onboarding, like see how it works. Then we're moving to your browsing experience on your app or something like that. And ends up with something like, ends up with the sharing experience. And we see at the end of the process, by like crunching down like the entire product, we like, at the end, we're like, okay, actually we don't need that much time and so that much money to build your product. It actually costs less. And that's what we do with this project. We work with an entrepreneur from San Francisco. It's called Blink. So it's an app that helps you to organize all your screenshots on your phone, etc., etc. And at first, like, we had no idea how to actually work together, and we started like by, okay, let's figure out like the UX patterns and the UI stuff like with the onboarding. So we started working with the onboarding of the app. Then we went with the entire like home screen, browsing experience and everything, but it was like already way easier because we had already all the UX patterns, the UI guides, the colors, the font, and the way like to put stuff together. At the end, like the sharing flow was like, okay, let's do it in 3 days because we already know the app by earth. We know the product. We're part of the team now. It like works super flawless between us. Then you get the idea of the estimate. You validate the budget where your clients and the freelancer, everyone agrees. You're like, okay, so now I'm gonna give you a brief about all the feature I want to build. And we're like, it's like, you know, when you're going to buy wine, and I'm French, but I'm not an expert in wine. It's like I'm going to the wine shop and I'm like, okay, I want that one that like smells like strawberry but tastes a little like wood, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I'm going to the wine shop to get advice from the wine expert and stuff like that. And that's kind of like a brief process. Like you're giving all your expectation to the freelancer and like, now do it. And actually, it's kind of the mistake. It's not working well. It's like, it's time consuming. Like you're gonna spend a day or two to write down the brief, and it's gonna be like incomplete because you're not a designer, so you don't know how a designer works and the mindset and everything. So some elements are gonna miss to the designer to start working. And there's another fact, like you're gonna think about the solution first without even asking the designer what he think about, and the solution will be like kind of like set in stone in this document. And it's kind of strange. So at Pelo Studio, we're prefer to start like a conversation. So we remove the brief. We're like, okay, let's set up around the table, talk for like 3 or 4 hours about your product, your vision, start building with together the product on paper. Ask a lot of questions, and like we spend like hours asking the co-founders like, okay, where did it come from? Like, what school did you do? And it's like, what's the problem you try to solve? Who are your users, etc., etc. And you actually we gain time because we don't do these exchanges like through emails, we like really painful emails and screenshots like, oh, I don't understand that feature, what it does, and stuff like that. And we gain like flexibility because we're already like in the mindset of the product and we know the product already. And basically during our workshop, we call that a workshop, we have like 3 phases. It's kind of like a pattern. We start like, as I say, like trying to get the startup vision, the culture, as you said, and also the business needs. For us, it's like really important to serve users. We're designers, we're working for users, but we're also working for like businesses, that startups, that's like crucial. Once we got that, we're exploring all the users' perspective and issues and etc. And then when we got everything, the entire context of the project, we got to our main work, which is like user flow and stuff like that we put on paper. Okay, so now like we got the brief, we got the context, we know exactly what we're gonna build. We got like a common vision with the entrepreneurs. We know the direction, the goals of what we're doing. So now like comes to the phase of UX. And at this point, like between like startups and us or other freelancers, there's also like a differences between like expectations. And we like to say like when it comes to about UX, it's not about like colors and like fonts and stuff like that. It's not, you're not like, as I said here, it's like you're not like choosing the wall colors before you're actually building the frames. Like you're here to build the skeletons of your app or your website and stuff like that. And what we think is like you need to get more iteration. You get at this point of the project, you need volumes. So it's better to build like low fidelity product like wireframes, to iterate, to move forward, to spend less time in like not pixel perfect wireframes, to actually focus on user flows and like focus on what really matters at this specific time of the project, and not like expect like super beautiful screens. Basically what we do is like stuff like that. It's pretty ugly, but it actually works super well. Like it's a work in progress like tool for the project. You actually like, you know what you talk about because of the workshop. You know like everything of each other, and you can use that as a communication tool between like the startups and the freelancer without having like super sexy screens. once you've done like all of this, you can just like put it in a prototype, and you get a perfect tool to like, okay, these are the user flows on my product. So once you fleshed out like the entire experience, you've been a lot, like you made a lot of progress, and then comes the times where everything's starting to be really complicated. We're about like colors, taste, and like super subjective like subjects. And it's like when you're buying like UI, like graphic design, like keep in mind that you need to optimize everything, and like your budget, your time, and everything. And it's like when you're buying UI to a freelance designer, you don't want to buy like screwdrivers when you only need the two screwdrivers on the left, and you actually buy the entire set that we're not gonna serve any day. So the idea is like optimizing this process, and like set with the startups and the freelancer like the 5 key mockups that you actually serve the value of your product. You're like, okay, I need my home page because it's here when I'm gonna sell my product. Then I need all the screens of my onboarding, and I don't know, like the profile pages. These are the key mockups and the key screens that actually serve my product. Everything else, like, you're not gonna buy like an about page, a sexy about page. It's like when you're starting your early stage startups, you actually don't, you actually don't need a sexy about page. And that's what we're actually trying to tell through this graphic. Is like after these key 5 mockups, you're bringing more value, but you're also like spending time and money on like stuff that doesn't like bring up that much the value. And basically after, if you're like, you can tell me like, yeah, but there's a lot of elements on other pages that is missing on these 5 key mockups. You're like, yeah, but you can actually produce that kind of documents that like, okay, I'm gonna define as a designer, I'm gonna define the buttons, the drop down, the titles, the colors, and everything that the developer are gonna be able to use to develop all the other pages. Once you've done that, you're like, okay, but like sometimes when like you get your mockups, your beautiful JPEGs from the designers, and you're like, okay, but my front-end developers, like another contractors did like crap with that. It's like, it's always the issue, and we did a conference in the family about that with Raman here. It's like, it's always a constant fight between designers and developers. Just like, you didn't get the right assets and everything is like a constant fight. And you actually need to involve your designers into this process. Even if freelancer is gonna maybe cost you a little bit of money, but honestly, you already save tons of money by doing only 5, by doing a workshop, 5 mockups, and etc. And this money you can spend it a little bit on what we call design follow-up. It's like, okay, I'm gonna ask for specs on on the design. So at Pelo Studio, we're using this tool called Zeppelin, Zeppelin.io, that allows you to, from Sketch, to like bring your PNGs and get all your sketch file and get all the specs like spacing, font, etc. But the best solution, we think, is like let the designer go in the same room with the front-end developers and work together side by side for a couple of days. It's like, okay, I'm gonna give you feedback on here. I can use tools, or just like by talking and like going over the screens and like, okay, change this font, like font size is wrong, like I can give you animation like references, so you can use it and stuff like that. And so by doing so, you save money before, and like at the end you're spending this money by having like this precious time and get the best product you can get at the end. So to recap real quick, like don't ask for like massive estimate with the tons of feature that impossible for the freelance designer to be honest about. Then like don't bother to write a brief. It's like it's time consuming and useless for the designer. Go in the same room and talk for like 3-4 hours what you need. Then get like, when it's about UX, don't bother to like use super like sexy screens, like go and be efficient about it. About UI, just like select the really high value elements and get with that. And at the end, like involve your designers in your development process to have this follow-up that is like making your product actually better. It's also like, okay, thank you. That's another thing about the design follow-up that also, I'm really sorry, that also like helps you like to get all these small elements that designers miss a lot of time, like shame on us, like the 404 page or like all the drop-down state and everything. It's just like always missing from the mockups. Actually, during the follow-up with the designers, it always like the freelancer to actually think about it and produce it on the go with the developer. And thanks a lot. If you have any question.
Hello. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Yep.
One question is what are the top 5 tools you use in your job?
We're actually using like Slack for communication. Sometimes we actually like jump into like and Dropbox. We're actually using Slack for communication. Sometimes with the clients, it's easier just to chat and go have a question and just like jump into his channel or just like, hey, dude, like what is like this feature actually does? Do you have any data about it? Dropbox obviously is like a tool like for sharing like all the files, heavy files that you can like go through emails. Sketch for all like design stuff. We're actually trying to stop using Adobe because like they're taking way much money. And that's pretty much it. And Zeppelin for all the specs and InVision. That's our tool belt, basically. Yep.
Thanks. I'm wondering, say, for a startup to scale from 0 to 100 to 1 million or 100 million users, even though the visual elements on the UI all stay the same, will you have to gradually change the making of the UI, how you code the UI, or do you need the infrastructure dev to work with you, maybe to change some of their code as well?
That's a good question. I would say like if you have like a really well-defined UI on your product, as designers, I would like encourage to not doing UI actually and re-templating everything from what you have now and just working on the UX. It's actually like a save of time and money. I'm not pro like doing sexy mockups for doing sexy mockups, even if it's like 30 wireframes. It's totally fine if you've done your job and the project is well executed. So yeah, if you have a well-defined UI, let's not work on that because it's already done. And if it's not the purpose of the mission, let's not do it. Is that like answering your question? Not sure.
Kind of, yeah. And another question is about the intellectual property. What if the startup decides to patent the UI, but you have already given lots of feedback, or lots of effort into it?
I'm not sure.
How do you deal with the intellectual property of the UI design?
We're actually giving everything to the startups. We're like their product, it's their properties, it's not ours. We're just here to like apply knowledges and process like that to just help them to get like a better product. But basically, it's their own product. We don't own anything on that. We just get the right to share it and just say, hey, we did it, and that's pretty much it.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you. I was wondering, you're 3, right? 3 designers. Do you, all 3 of you, always work on the same subject, or do you only let one designer work on one project, or do you parallel design, co-design? How do you work all 3 of you together?
It's a good question. Question we got a lot when you're starting a project with the startups. for the workshop and everything at the very beginning of the project, even like getting an estimate and talking to the startups to actually like figure out what is the project and this is what it's all about. We're almost all three like involved, just so we can get a real conversation and all these ideas like jumping up and just like, okay, we got the same idea, cool. When it's about like production, like UX and UI, we're mostly like only one designer is working on it for like, you know, like efficiency purposes. But yeah, at the very beginning of the project, when it comes to like settle down everything, we're like almost like all three involved in the project.
Hi, quick question. I don't know where you're based or where you work with your clients. I'm assuming maybe close to where you are or around the world. But you said, I like the idea of asking a lot of questions to find out what's going to happen. I had to deal with that problem actually with a client recently. And I found that by asking a lot of questions, it actually helped me. So the question is, do you do this always in person? Obviously, if you're close by, but if you can't, how do you do it if they're not in person or if they're far away?
Yeah, good question, because I was talking about having a conversation around the table. Obviously, when and I presented a project that we're doing with an entrepreneur in San Francisco, so it's a little bit paradoxal. Basically, we have all the tools like Hangout or Skype and stuff like that, and we actually never hesitate to jump on the call with the client and the startups like anytime. Like we find the time. Our philosophy, it's like it's not an excuse to not communicate. Even over email, even if we're trying to not sending like too much email because it's like super heavy and you're actually not having a conversation. And it's like, it's the core of what we're doing. It's like understanding all the needs and having this conversation all the time through the entire project. And so basically, if the entrepreneur or the startups is like away through like in San Francisco or in Singapore or in China, like whatever, we're actually using like all the tools we can get, like Skype, like Hangouts, or even like calling over the phone if it's needed, or go there simply. But it's a little bit expensive, so we're not doing that all the time. But like, yeah, it's like for the project I show, like the app, the screenshot app, we're actually having like a review every week, every Tuesday night. So it's like 7 p.m. for us, and it's like 10 a.m. for him in San Francisco, and it's a weekly process, and every week we're actually discussing about the scope of what we're doing next week or next month, and what are like the goals, the priorities and everything, and we're having this conversation every week. We also starting developing a culture on this specific project. Like just a funny story, like every call starts with like playing all the sounds effects and all the stuff that we have on Google Hangout, and it's starting to be like a tradition. Like every week we're doing the same joke, like, hey, like starting the call with like super loud rap music or stuff like that. And it's actually like super healthy and like super productive because we're actually starting to know each other and removing this barrier, freelancer clients, that it's like sometimes like hurtful for the product and the project.
Hello again. So my question is not really related to the work you actually do, but let's say it's about your partnership with those two guys here. I see that they did earlier a prank on the presentation, I suppose. They changed maybe something. There was a error page. Yeah. So usually when you start, there's a startup, you would look for people, you would work with people that are not in your field, in your area. But with you, I guess you're all designers. Yeah. So as you do the same thing, what was your choice based on as partners? I suppose you get along pretty well. Yeah. But how did you decide to work with them? I'm curious about that.
Okay. So first was like friendship. We know each other for like 7 years or something like that. That was the core thing. We're three designers. We love like doing what we do, design. But then after school, like pretty much during schoolship, we were like the same profile. But then we like split up for like 2 years or so. And we actually got like specific skills each other. Like I've been like doing product in startups in San Francisco for 2 years. So I knew a couple of stuff. Raman was doing like a dev work for like development work for like companies like Facebook and stuff, and just really get into technical like issues and like projects. And Guillaume was like working with like a big consulting agency, innovation agency, sorry, with like doing its more like UX and global like vision of a product and stuff like that. So after these 3 years, we just realized that we're actually complementary, and we've been like, we would be able to tackle any kind of project. And from our client list right now, there's like really different fields, from like health, like fooding and apps and stuff like that. They're this complementary of skills, even if we're the core skills is like design, the complementary everything else around is like really essential. And so we can pretty much tackle any kind of project, any size of project. I mean, depending of the time and the budget and everything, but like you bring us a really complex problem where I think we would be able to solve it. So, I mean, I believe in that. So I hope so.
Hi, again. It's me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey. Where do you guys do user testing, and when, where? Because you talk about user experience, but you haven't really explicitly talked about it during the presentation. So I was wondering when you guys start testing with actual users.
We're actually trying to. Sometimes like super hard to convince startups to actually pay us for that. So that's still the barrier we have to go through. And but sometimes, and specifically with this project, with the weekly reviews and everything, we are actually able to get data from users and test like all the different versions we're doing. But mostly it's on startups, and like unfortunately it's not on us, even if we would love to do that, and we've done that before on our previous experience. But as like an agency and a like freelancer role, it's actually hard to sell that and doing that with like small projects with a small cost and everything.
So the user research goes to the startups. The startups are the ones doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like most of the time they actually endorse that role. And what's like we're really happy when actually startups come back after a project with like a spreadsheet with a lot of data and a lot of quality testimonials from users. It's just like, hey, look at that. Like there is good point and bad points about what you've done for us. Let's work on that. And that's the most like great thing that could happen to us. It was like startups come back with actually feedback, and especially good and bad feedback. But bad feedback is better because that means we can improve it. And basically, yeah, that's the most grateful experience we can get. It's like a startup that comes back with like data, user experience, testimonials, and stuff like that. But honestly, it doesn't happen like much because like obviously like budget and we're not part of the team. Like we're part of the team for like a couple of weeks, month, but after that, like we're like, okay, go back to our own business.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. My question is, how does all this design process coordinate with the development process? Because I think that the client won't wait very long for the design, and he will want a very quick functional product. And also, how do you react when the design doesn't match the result? Like we have a very big thing to display and it doesn't match the design, for example.
Yeah, good question. So first point, like with the dev process, that's what I was trying to tell at the end of the presentation is like we're trying actually to get involved in this process. Sometimes, you know, most of the time, like startups have like their own technical team within the startups, and that's the best because we can involve I don't know, the CTO, the front end dev at the very beginning of the project, even like with the workshop, so we can start talking about user experience with the developers, and that's actually the best because they're actually understanding what we do, and they keep following up like through the entire project, which is amazing for us because at the end he knows exactly what he's going to develop and why he's doing it. And at the end, we're trying to be like sitting in the same room or doing like weekly reviews with him to actually like just fine tune all the small details. When we can't do that because the developer team is like contractors and other contractors, it's getting super hard, almost impossible to get this result. How we react when that happens? We have two choices. We'll just give up and just like close our eyes. It's like, okay, our design is okay. The result is not there, but that's fine. The project is over for us. We've been okay on the budget and everything. Or we like just call the CEO or the founders and just like, okay, maybe you can, and we do that for free because just for the design sake, we're like, okay, you can maybe like tweak that, or change a little bit here. Like, I don't know, space up a little bit all the fonts and change the font size and everything, and just give advice for free. Like, we're just like calling the founders because we've been close enough during the project because of this process to tell him all the things just over the phone or Skype or whatever.